Yay!
All is well.
All is well. All right.
Whew.
Now we just have 2 minutes. 2 minutes.
And it loaded back up all the audios on.
Everything looked like it went right back to it. So just 2 minutes.
So now we can just sit here casually. Oh, your Red Bull.
Oh,
Oh man. Let me would there be paper
don't worry
towels
about it.
somewhere?
Don't.
Okay.
Oh, except it's on the.
Yeah, on the cords.
Oh,
Sure.
my goodness.
On the
We're good.
what do we have?
Just electricity.
Oh God. Just electricity. Don't worry about it. Just some wires.
All right.
Okay.
1 minute. We're gonna be fine. Oh, I drank it all for a reason. So I drank it all specifically. Allison's excited. She's like,
The
"This
best
is."
part about it was you were still like, doop 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 doop. We don't have to panic.
We're leaving it right there. Doop 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 doop. Doop 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 doop.
So before
We're going live. We're going
we
in.
didn't used to have this like blocker, but now
Hold on, we may not actually have a blocker. Everybody might be hearing exactly what we're saying. Let me just say that right off the bat. I'm pretty sure there is no blocker. I'm pretty sure that we are officially just on because I no longer know what's happening because I have lost complete control here. Just trying to start the program. So I can't get the screen thing off because this is too much for one person to do.
which brings us to a really great point.
All right. We're here. We are here. What's the really great point?
I thought we could talk about production.
About production?
Yeah.
We are about to start talking about production. Starting right now, but we have to have an official start.
Yes.
So here, official start. What's going on? And welcome back to sharing our stories. My name is Slim with Nani Al Jalil from Tribe Recovery Homes. And this program is all about addiction and recovery. And if you are just checking in with us for the first time, we're here to share stories of recovery, to let you know that, yes, we do recover. And there are so many different pathways to recover. There's not just one way to do it. If there was one way to do it, we would be one and done. This program would be finished. Everybody would be in recovery and we would just be celebrating all the time. Celebrating. But unfortunately, it's not like that. Unfortunately, it takes a lot of work. And sometimes the first way isn't the one way to do it. And sometimes people relapse. And recovery is not always easy. But yes, we do recover. There is a pathway. I truly believe there is a pathway for everybody in recovery. So welcome to sharing our stories. Our guest is Alyson Reiner from Colorado Springs, and we're going to turn it over to her in just a second. Before we begin recovery, though, talking about all the awesome things that happened here in this studio.
In the minutes, right here, right now.
In the minutes before the program began.
It was we had a good time.
A
few minutes ago.
We were like, all right, scramble, scramble, scramble. We all ran in the door and we're setting up cameras and moving behind the scenes. And we're like, all right, we have a few minutes to relax.
We had
3 minutes. I put my Red Bull to the side. And then my Red Bull fell on the floor with 2 minutes to go. We were sitting here going, just relaxing. And then the Red Bull fell on. The Red Bull is still on the floor. Because we said, you can smell it for real?
Yeah. Yes.
Other people work in this room. We're going to have to do something about that.
How are we going to? go under these conditions.
It is what it is. It is what it is. So we want to thank you for joining us. This program is about recovery, and we want to share in that. Before we do that, first we talked about the Red Bull spill. I got to check in with Nani. Nani from Tribe Recovery Homes. It's one of the many places here in Colorado that provides a place for people to find their recovery, whether it's drugs or alcohol or both. And what is going on in your world?
Yes, lots of different things. Tribe, as always, is really busy. Super excited about that. I personally am very excited. I am going to be planning a trip back to Kuwait over the winter time. My deputy director and I were just talking about that recently. So that's very exciting.
Tell me why, where, what? I mean, where, obviously, but tell me about that.
Kuwait, yeah. So I have not been back to Kuwait since
now,
for
why?
10 years.
Tell them why you're
because
back.
I'm a dual citizen
Yes,
of the United States and Kuwait. And all my family is back there. My little brother is getting married. So we have two, in our culture, we have two different times. We have the civil ceremony and then we have the big wedding ceremony. And my brother is having his big wedding in December. So I'll be able to go back for his wedding, which is just like a huge deal.
Oh.
Yeah. So I've been working on getting my American passport, and then I'm going to go back and do things for my Kuwaiti citizenship. So it's just like, it's a really awesome opportunity for me. And I'm stoked. Yeah.
When is that?
Really
when are you going?
I'm going to go in December.
All right. We're taking the week off for that. So
okay.
Yeah. Well, because I can't do this without you. And I want you to just go and do it and come back and tell us the whole story. So I can't wait. Okay. Let's talk recovery. And she's in the middle, and she was recommended to come in or asked by a friend of ours, Keith Hayes from 5280 High School. And shout out to 5280 High School.
Yep.
Just one of the most awesome things that's happening in Colorado. But he put us and Allyson together, and we want to welcome you. Thank you for being here. Thank you. We're going to bring this down here.
Oh, thank you.
It's like the dentist office with these microphones.
Okay, right in there.
Right in there. Like we want
Right
just
there.
like, how are your teeth doing? So we put that microphone right there in front of you. Allyson, want to thank you. You are a Colorado native. Born and raised in Colorado Springs. What about the changes in Colorado Springs that you've seen in your life?
It's huge. I don't even recognize it.
I didn't know you were from the Springs. That's where I'm from too. Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah. So many, just tons of growth and houses everywhere. I'm just like, what is this place?
Yeah.
So
Totally different place. Like, and you can just every 6 months you go to Colorado Springs and you're like, oh, it's changed again.
It
More
just keeps
strip
going
malls.
further out east and further out east.
Everywhere.
Yeah.
Growing, expanding. Allyson, thank you for being here. We're going to turn this over to you and let you share in the story of your recovery, your struggles with addiction, and your life thus far. And want to thank you so much for coming in. So for everybody here with us on Sharing Our Stories, our guest is Alyson Reiner from Colorado Springs, and turn it over to you. Thank you.
Thank you. I will probably cry. Definitely. I'm a big crier.
So am I. So it could be contagious. Okay.
Lots of tears of gratitude. Definitely. And also I probably sound like a Valley girl. I just want to put that out there. I get it all the time. I was never a cheerleader. I'm just going to say that. I played sports. Okay. And also just want to thank Hanan for inviting me, just for seeing you on this journey for, many years now. It's totally come full circle to sit here with you in this chair. So I'm very grateful for that. Thanks for asking me to come share. And yes, Keith Hayes at 5280, amazing friend. Him and I have grown close, for the past 4 years. We do a lot of service work together, and he's become a really dear friend of mine that I know I can call at any time. So I'm really grateful for him. A little bit about me. Born and raised in Colorado Springs, as it was mentioned. My parents were divorced, and they divorced at a pretty young age. My dad ended up cheating on my mom and kind of left and did his own thing. He really wasn't a part of my life for a really long time. And I do just have to say that everything I've learned about my past is from learning and growing in recovery. So I'm able to like really look back and recognize my past for what it is and recognize how I felt because of my journey in recovery. And I just think that that's really important to be able to understand for me. So growing up, I didn't know at the time, but I had felt unlovable. I had felt not good enough. I had felt ugly, really. And like that happened at a very young age. And I didn't even know until I got into recovery that that's how I was feeling. But now looking back, I can see that. And as a direct result of feeling that way, I behaved and acted any way to hide or not feel those feelings or those beliefs or really those lies that I held about myself. I got into sports. I loved sports. It kind of like really took me away from life. I became really obsessed with it. I had to be the best. And I was very competitive. And that really filled a good part of my life for a long time. It kind of like filled and validated me and kind of gave me some self-esteem, some confidence. I really felt like I was kind of moving away from those core beliefs that I had just growing up. And then, volleyball started to get like very competitive. And I really wasn't the best player all the time. So a lot of doubt started to creep in, a lot of insecurity, and I lost a lot of self-esteem. And I really started to kind of shrink back into those feelings and beliefs that I had for a really long time. And I started to see that like life, volleyball and sports, it wasn't going to sustain me. It wasn't going to keep me from feeling the way that I was feeling. And so I started to, it was around in high school, I started to notice that the boys, were into me. And I took that and ran with that. And I liked the way that men made me feel. I liked the validation that I got from them. I liked that I didn't have to believe the beliefs that I had had for a really long time. I started to believe from them that maybe I was worth something, that maybe I was good enough. And I, more often than not, for a good portion of my life, I dated or talked to more than one guy because I really needed them to fill me up. And again, like that didn't last long for me. It didn't fill me up, it didn't give me, what I needed. It just was never enough for me. And so then, through dating guys is when I started to get introduced to drugs. And it was always like some guy that I was dating who was, doing some drug or smoking something. And of course, I always did what they were doing because I didn't want them to leave me, because I've always had this fear of being alone and feeling not good enough and feeling unloved. That, of course, I gave my life over to whatever guy I was with, doing whatever drug we were doing. So for practically my entire life, I was seeking something to make me feel better. And the only thing that I knew were things outside of me. And so that's where this all, started. I started looking for things outside of myself to make me feel better for decades. And I really did think that some of these things would kind of fix my internal problem. And they just never Never did. But the one thing that really did take it away for a while, those beliefs, those feelings, was drugs and alcohol. And since the very first time that I drank in high school, I was a blackout drinker. Like first time, blacked out, and I remember I loved it. The next day, I was like, God, I can't wait to do that again because I really craved just not feeling, not thinking. I liked the blackout. I liked Oblivion. That said a lot in the 12-step arena. So yeah, I was like, let's do this. And paralleled with like wanting to drink and drug all the time was like me also trying to be a part of life, trying to prove that I was good enough in other aspects. So like trying to go to college. I didn't get into college or a 4-year college because my grades weren't good. I did not attend school. I almost didn't graduate because of my drug use. And I was able, to kind of stop in high school for certain reasons, like not being able to graduate, right? Like I got really scared and I could stop using drugs and go to summer school and do these things that I needed to do because I also didn't want to look bad, right? I didn't want to look bad in front of my mom, my family, right? Because I still have these beliefs that I'm not good enough. And so I really need everybody on the outside or who's around me to see that I am good enough. And so for a while I could stop and I could, do the things that I needed to do to like just get by really. So I like just got by with graduating high school. And then of course, the grades weren't good enough to go to a 4-year college. So I ended up going to community college. So thus again, it was like, ooh, like I'm still not good enough. It's still not what everybody or what society thinks, I should or need to be doing. And so again, I turned back to the drugs. And my cousin, she's a year older than me, and she was going to CU Boulder at the time when I was a senior. So she came back, and it was the summer before I would go to community college in Boulder. And my cousin and I, like her and I are really, really close. Probably every time I've like drank or drugged or any kind of like big thing in life, like we've always been like sisters, through it all. And the first time I ever drank was with her. We were 13 and we begged her dad to buy us Mike's Hard Lemonade. Like we were like, please just buy us. And we would not stop. We were relentless like that. And so finally he was like, okay, like, so he bought us a pack of Mike's Hard Lemonade. We were 13 and like, we just thought we were the coolest. And we stayed up all night. And I remember after that also, it was that feeling of like, I want to do that again. And so anyway, her and I ended up moving in together. So she was a sophomore then at CU, and then I was a freshman at the community college right outside in Longmont. So we lived together, and her and I were so much alike that we just kind of fed off of each other, right? Like we would go to school all day. We would drink and smoke all night. We would wake up and like do it all over again. And I could maintain my drinking and using, and I could go to school at the same time. And I felt like I could just do it all. And around this time, I really got into doing Adderall. And I would steal Adderall. I would do anything to get Adderall because it really like helped me and aided me in like doing school and staying up and drinking and all of that. I also met a guy who is a bartender in Boulder, and he was about 4 years older than me, and so he got me a really good fake ID. And he was also into the festival scene. So after about 2.5 years of, kind of maintaining school and the party life, I was all done. I was all done with school. I was like, yeah, I'm going to work at a bar. I'm going to go to festivals, and like, this is what I'm going to do. Like, I totally embraced this like party girl image that I had going on. And I didn't even like think about where my life was going. Like, all that mattered was the drinking and the using. And him and I, we worked at bars, so late nights, and really got into doing a lot of acid and mushrooms and Molly and camping and just feeling free, right? Like, that's how I thought I felt. Like, I really did. I thought like, this is the greatest thing. I was the happiest when I was doing acid. I was the happiest when I was in the woods, just like in touch with nature. And I really thought it, like I had arrived at this, like finally this place that like I was okay. And, but I still have a family, and I still have people outside that are like, what you're doing is not what you should be doing, right? Like, I felt judged. I felt, that like not good enough, like not living up to my parents' standards or whatever it was, society standards, or what I should be, or, all of those different thought processes that happen. And I'm really good at like self-sabotaging or building my house up and tearing it down. I'm really good at like being really happy and then just totally messing up the entire situation. Because I really like being happy and I really like the high highs, but I also really like the low lows. Either way, I can justify in those two arenas, right? If I'm really happy, let's do this, let's party, let's have fun. If I'm really sad, let's, do drugs and alcohol. And so that's how I lived my life for a very long time, very high, very low. And and I went through a lot of breakups. I will have to say that I was very promiscuous, and I went through and was with a lot of men. And I hurt a lot of people, in this journey. A lot of people in this journey because of my actions. And I was one that I would cheat on everybody. I didn't know how to like show up and have boundaries or share my truth or really be able to tell anybody how I felt. I mean, mainly because I really didn't know how I felt. I'm not able to like recognize like how I'm feeling in the moment. Like, I was never taught that. I didn't even understand any of that. And so all I knew was I was looking for more, and I was always looking for something better. And anytime a guy came in, usually in my mind, like, oh, like they're better, right? Or, they're elevated in some like weird social class, or the drug dealer, or whatever. I always went for men who what I thought had ambition in whatever area that looked like. I had been dating this guy for a long time. And then I ended up cheating on him because I met somebody else at the bar. And like, I fell in love instantly, right? Like, I thought he was the one, especially because like one of the first times he like offered me cocaine, right? And so I was like, oh, like this guy.
This is definitely the one.
This is the guy for sure.
Oh yeah, he loves you.
Yes,
Mhm.
exactly. At the bar, right?
Mhm.
Of course.
Mhm.
So, yeah, I just totally upended my whole entire world for this guy. Got rid of my cell phone, did whatever he had asked. And, the funny thing about it is one of the nights we had gone out, he had gotten a DUI and I was with him. And I didn't know it at the time, but it was actually his 5th DUI.
Mm.
So I was like, great.
Mhm.
It's like, oh, well, that's fine. So anyway, he went into work release. He had all kinds of shit that he had to deal with legally, but I had quit my job and moved right in with him. And so he was really my only source of survival at the time. Because I didn't have a job. I had, moved out of my house. And so he was it, right? I had once again turned my entire world over to this freaking guy. And so anyway, he ended up having to go into work release and, but he had to be sober, because of, he had the legal stuff, probation and all the things. And so, he also owned a pet grooming salon. So, for about a year, eventually I was able to kind of come off of the drinking and the drugging. Of course, he had pills, Klonopin and Percocet. So I started doing those, but I wasn't drinking and I wasn't blacking out every single night, which I had done for a good portion of my life. And I really thought I was getting sober because I wasn't drinking and doing drugs at the time. But he couldn't do it, so I couldn't do it. And he had something to kind of fill in the not drinking and the whole drugging thing. And so anyway, we ended up running his grooming salon together for about a year while he was, doing what he needed to do for his DUIs. And I felt great. I felt really, really good, not drinking, not using, right? Now I'm a part of this business. Now, I'm starting to come up in the world and maybe people will look at me differently, mainly my mom. And so things were great for a really long time. I ended up going to grooming school, learning how to groom dogs, and I loved working with dogs. It was amazing. I loved clients, working with the clients. They were old and just so sweet. And I was pretty good at it. Who knew that I would be good at grooming dogs. Anyway. But through this whole thing, him and I, we fought constantly. He was older than me. It was really an abusive relationship. So on the outside, everything looked great. And on the outside, I could say that everything was great. But really, if I really look at that relationship, the true parts of it, it was awful. Like I said, we fought all the time, super emotionally abusive, really isolated me from a lot of my friends and family. It was just him and I for a really long time. And I was scared, right? I was scared to do or, step outside of this relationship. And I was honestly really scared to leave the drugs that he was providing. And so I stayed in this really unhealthy, abusive relationship. And just really held on to the fact that these outside things were okay. Right. As long as all of this is okay. I have a house, I have a job. We're building this business together. Then all the other stuff would work out. And I am also, I'm a real alcoholic. And even though I had these other things to kind of sustain me, like the benzos and the Percocet, like I still had this real urge to drink, and I could kind of like get through some of those cravings or whatever thoughts, but ultimately I would always kind of go back to drinking. And then again there would be like a huge fight. It would be crazy because he knew I was an alcoholic and he thought he didn't have a problem. And so it was just all sorts of unhealthy. But he started to tell me that, like, you have a problem. He would tell me that I needed to go to treatment. And so I did. I would go to these like outpatient treatments. And that's where I first, found the 12-step program, was through these outpatient programs. And I would go and I would like get done with these treatment programs, and him and I would go out, and he'd be like, well, let's drink. Let's drink, you've never done sake, so let's do that. And so then I would, and then thus would start like the whole thing over again, right? And I would eventually start drinking and wanting more drugs from him. And, then he would be like, okay, you need to go to treatment, or you need to go to meetings. And I would, because I didn't want him to leave me. I didn't want to be alone, right? I didn't want to feel unlovable. And so, I would do these things. I would go, and then I would like come back. It was just really to satisfy him, like to listen to him and do what he wanted so I could get what I wanted. Pure manipulation. So after he got off probation, he just went like crazy. He was doing like all sorts of hard drugs. And I was like still showing up to work, and he wouldn't show up to work. And we had like broken up at the time, and him and I, yeah, we went through all these different, like breaking up, getting back together, anyway. So we weren't together at this time, but we were like running this this business together. And so then one night, I remember I had to get a waitressing job in order to pay for my rent, because I had like moved out into my own apartment. And God, I had like worked for, at least 3 weeks to save up enough money for rent. And he called me, and he's like, hey, I hadn't talked to him in a little bit. And again, like this whole time, just so you know, I'm like drinking and, doing all these things. But anyway, he called me up, and he was like, hey, do you want to get numb? I had no idea like what he was talking about or whatever. And I was like, sure. He's like, do you have any money? And I was like, yeah, like I had $650 for rent. He's like, okay, like, well, I'll definitely give you that money tomorrow. And I was like, okay. So like I had no problem, like literally giving my rent money away to go do drugs. Like that was a real thing for me. You hear people talk about it all the time. And like that was a real thing for me. And so yeah, we started, smoking crack and doing cocaine, and we totally smoked up the entire business. Like we didn't show up for our clients anymore, or if I did, like I was super shaky, and I would end up like cutting a bunch of dogs. And anyway, it was just that went on for, I want to say 6 months, 7 months of us, just smoking crack.
Just spiraling.
Yep. Like just going downhill. We had this business, we had a line of credit, like we used that to our advantage. His mom had a lot of money. So we constantly were scrambling for money all the time, getting it any way we could, lying, manipulating, all the behaviors that come along with needing that next high. So of course it started to get really bad, And I, of course, in his eyes, am always the worst one. And so he's like, you need to go to treatment. And I was just like, oh my God, like, what do you mean? Like, go to treatment? I don't even know what that means. And because I didn't, like, I knew nothing about recovery or treatment or anything like that. And he knew because he was a little bit older than me, and he had gone to really prestigious treatment centers. He had been through quite a few of them, honestly. Like all the big ones. What's that one in Minnesota?
Oh, Betty Ford.
And Hazelden.
Oh, okay. Wow.
Yeah. So like anyway, that was always his thing with me. Like, you need to go to treatment. And I didn't like, nothing like came about it. I didn't actually do anything, and he didn't force me to, but we ended up getting into a really big fight. Cops were called. Like, I was throwing dishes. Like, it was insane at this apartment complex that I lived at, like just complete insanity, like no concept of anybody else except for myself. And anyway, cops were called. We broke up. Nobody went to jail that night. He I don't know what he did. I don't remember because I was like, really high. And now from like this point on, I don't remember a lot of the next couple of days. My mom actually is the one who kind of helped me backtrack all of this and kind of told me what happened, because I didn't have any recollection. So anyway, we broke up. My world is ending, right? Of course. What do? I drink, because that's what I do. And that's exactly what I did. I'd been like up all night for a couple of days. And so anyway, I do remember calling my mom and asking her for money, which she of course gave to me. And I remember buying like a fifth. And I drank all of that. And then my mom said I drank another one or something. I don't know. What happened was I had called the cops on myself in a complete blackout. And they came to my apartment, and I answered the door with a knife in my hand. And they were like, we got a call that you're going to kill yourself, or you're thinking about killing yourself. And anyway, so they ended up taking me to detox. And I remember slightly going into this detox. Like, I have like images of it, but I don't. Anyway, so I went to this detox. My dog, because I have a dog. Oh, because this guy gave me this dog for my birthday, and he was like, here, this dog will keep you sober and help you stay sober. I was like, that's amazing. It's
like
not
magic.
I know, right? I was like, this is it. Anyway, that did not happen. But she, this dog, and I still have her to this day, but she was always with me. I'm so happy that she made it through all of the times that I was in a blackout. Yeah, because I lived on the 3rd floor, and I would take her everywhere with me because she has separation anxiety. And because she was with me in the dog grooming salon 24/7, right? Like all the time. And so when I had gotten the waitressing job, she couldn't go to work with me. And so she would bark and bark and bark, and the cops would get called. Anyway, so her and I were like really, really close. And thank God that like she was able to stay with me, because there were so many times when I was blacked out, and I lived on the 3rd floor. And so she would like climb all those stairs with me. And like, thank God that she made it through. But my house, like that apartment, my mom said when she went back, like it got to the point where I wouldn't let my dog out, and because I would stay in my apartment. And so there was like BCs and just it was just, that apartment was trashed, like I just lived.
It's gross.
Yeah, like I didn't care,
Mhm.
I was doing what I was doing, and that was smoking crack. So Anyway, so then, okay, I go into this detox. It was really nice. And this finally, when I came to and was like really present, my blood alcohol level was really high. I had lots of different substances in my system. I'm sitting on this bed in this hospital, just feeling like horrible, terrified, just like what happened, right? And this woman, she was so nice. She came in and she was like, "Hey, we think you should go into our 30-day program." It's like, "No, it's not that bad." Like, that's what I was thinking in my head. Like, it's not that bad. And I was like, "Well, what about my dog?" I don't know if you've ever watched any intervention episodes, but you hear so much, that excuse or my dog,
Yeah.
right?
Absolutely. All the time.
Like,
All the time.
Yep.
Mhm.
Classic.
Mhm.
So classic. I threw that out there. But my dog, like, who's gonna take care of her? What am I gonna do? Like, I gotta be with her. And she was like, "Your mom's gonna take your dog." And I was like, "Okay." And like, I didn't really know what to do, right? Because I was so, so terrified of what had just happened, that I was like, okay, like, I guess, like, I had just broken up with this guy. I knew I wasn't going to be working in there. Like my life was just, yeah, I didn't have anything better to do, basically. So I was like, okay, like, I will go into this 30-day program that they had. And I didn't even know it was 30 days. Actually, my mom told me that. And for many, many years, I thought I was only there for like 2 weeks. Um, but my mom was like, "No, you were there for over 30 days." And I didn't even remember that. Didn't remember that. Like, I just remember being so, so sick. I couldn't stop shaking. It was the worst detox. I'd never gone through detox, so I can't say ever, but like, to me, it was horrible. And I remember like sitting there looking at the nurse, just being like, "Am I ever gonna stop shaking? Like, is this ever gonna happen?" And she's like, "Yeah." Like, of course they pumped me full of all kinds of medications, right? Like, they're just trying to make me feel comfortable. And I wanted to feel better. I did. Like, I don't like feeling sick, never have, right? That's why I constantly drank and used every single day. I didn't even realize that I didn't want to not feel sick. I just, like, that's what I did. And that was just the norm. So feeling that sick, I was like, yeah, this is awful. But they had really good food. I remember just being like, "This is amazing." A lot of relief came from that. A lot of relief of like telling my mom like how bad it had gotten. And again, like, super terrified of going back to where I was. And so, when I was there, lots of 12-step fellowships came in and had meetings. I don't remember them. And my caseworker or somebody, I don't know, she was like, "You got to go to meetings. You got to go." And I knew that I didn't want to move back in with my mom because I had done that a couple of times. I had moved back in with her thinking that like I would be okay, or like I could get my life back on track, and it had never worked. I always ended up like drinking because those overwhelming feelings of not good enough would just cripple me when I would go back to my mom's house. Every time I went back, it was just like I could not even like feel any of that. It was absolutely not, and I could not handle it at all. And so I knew that I was like, I can't go back to my mom's. Like, I cannot live with her. She also like drinks wine and has it around all the time. And I just didn't feel like that was going to be a safe place for me. And I remember like telling her like, get everything out of, my room down there or whatever. And so anyway, I ended up going and living with my aunt. So, and I ended up getting out of that treatment center and going to meetings. And I want to say that like I stayed sober ever since, but that's just not my story. I really, really struggled for years in and out of the 12-step rooms. I would start to feel better. I would meet some guys. I would start behaving, I'd get right into my behaviors that I knew. I still hadn't dealt with those feelings of not being loved because, right, like you take the drinking and the drugging away and I'm still left with myself, right? And I didn't understand for a very long time that I needed to actually work on myself. I thought just not doing the drinks or not doing the drugs and drinking would like fix everything. And I had to learn the hard way, and I was miserable. There is no worse feeling for me than being in and out and not being able to stay stopped from drinking and using and going into the rooms and like hearing the solution and hearing people's lives and how great they are and not being able to get that. Again, like overwhelming feelings of feeling not good enough. Like there's something like inherently wrong with me. Like what's wrong with me? So I struggled for many, many years, super miserable. I hurt a lot of people in the process. I would go into the rooms as like my safe place. It was always my safe place. I stayed away from that guy for a little bit, but man, I was just talking to my mom about it on Sunday because my he just got done with a really rough relationship, really unhealthy. And like this, my ex had a hold on me for so many years. My mom was, what we were saying was just like, she couldn't believe how long I had like stayed with him or gone back to him or whatever. She's like, I don't know what it was with him. And I was like, honestly, I just think it was the drugs. He always had the drugs. And whenever I didn't want to feel or whenever I had fucked up bad enough or things weren't going right, I'd go back to him or ultimately going back to the drugs. And so, I had started doing the steps this one time. I've started to do the steps many, many times.
I was going to say this one time I heard you say, yes.
I always say I did a lot of fourth steps and I could never get to that fifth step. I could never be completely honest. Anyway, so I did a lot of 1, 2, 3, 4s with quite a few sponsors. Anyway, but I was working the steps. I was feeling so good. I was like being of service, going into detoxes, starting meetings. Like, man, like it was feeling good. My life was starting to come up. I had a job. And this guy, my ex, that I'd been smoking crack with, way back when, he had reached out or something, or we had never stopped talking. I don't know. But anyway, he's like, come to Georgia. Like, you need to come to Georgia. And I was like, you know what? I can do my amends. I'm going to go to Georgia and I'm going to make my amends to you. Like, this is perfect, right?
Oh, yeah.
And honestly, I truly, in my heart of hearts, felt that like I could do this, right? And I believed myself. And that's the scariest part about addiction. And it's the lies that I tell myself. I can't even see it, right? And I can't even see it start to spiral. And so that was my plan. And so I land in Georgia. He picks me up and he's like talking about meth the whole time. And I'm like, why are you talking about meth? He's like, oh, I have some in the trunk. I was like, dude, I'm sober. Like, what do you mean? And he's like, well, you've never tried meth, so it doesn't count as a relapse. I'm like, you're right.
Of course it doesn't.
Oh,
That's exactly what I needed right there. So, yes, then that started my my journey with meth.
Mhm.
Yeah, it was rough. That I was only supposed to be in Georgia for 4 days. Yeah, I was there for almost 2 weeks, and the entire time using meth. Not, of course, him and I are fighting. You know, of course, him and I are just doing the same things that we've always done. And I was a big smoker. So I was smoking cigarettes and doing drugs. And honestly, I almost died. I wasn't like eating or drinking very much. And so my liver started to shut down and I was getting really jaundiced. And I just like had this thought, you know, I lost so much weight just in those 2 weeks, but I was like, fuck, like I'm going to die. I'm going to die if I stay here. And he kept, you know, saying, I need to, you got to stay here. You know, we're going to make it work and this and that. And, you know, thank God I had a little taste of recovery, I had commitments. I had just started this women's meeting. I had been doing all these different things. And so I had that relief. I had that feeling with me. And it was strong enough and really an act of God that I left Georgia and like came back to Colorado.
Those commitments can be really powerful.
They
Service commitments that you make can be a really powerful thing.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Honestly, because that's what I thought. That's what I thought in that moment was like, I've been doing all these things, or what's my sponsor gonna think if I don't come back? I can't keep lying to her. You know, like I had all of these thoughts going on. And so I went back. I didn't tell anybody that what I had done, that I had used, that I had been doing the things that I had been doing. I just like, I went right back into it, going to meetings. So we did this detox meeting. So right outside of El Paso County Jail at the time, they had this like little hut and it was a detox.
Oh yeah. The tent.
Yes, the tent.
Yes, I'm very familiar with. Yeah.
So we would go in there every week and bring a meeting in. And I just remember, and a lot of the women struggled with meth use. I think probably everybody at that time, for whatever reason, was, you know, addicted to meth. But I really needed that because I had just, you know, come off of like using meth. And man, like sitting with these women and hearing them share where meth use had taken them, where their addiction had taken them, I was like, shit, that's me. Like that's going to happen to me. And I knew it to the core of me. And I really felt in that moment, like I need to be in recovery and I need to be doing these things. And so I held on to that secret for a very long time and just continued on. And of course, like I was doing a lot of service. The sponsor I had at the time was very, very involved in the 12-step fellowship. So she would take me to everything, things that I had never even heard of, committees, like all these things. I had no idea what she was talking about. And I had started to meet a lot of people in Denver because I was still in Colorado Springs at the time. And, you know, of course, I'm doing all of these things, but I'm not really working on myself. I'm not doing the work inside. So eventually, this same guy reaches out to me.
Georgia.
Georgia. Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
That's
Mhm.
his name now.
Yep. Yeah, he reaches out to me around my birthday in 2015. Yeah. He's like, I'm coming out to Colorado, pick me up from the airport. And I had just kind of started dating this guy in the rooms. And I was like, and I really liked him. And he was like he was about 18 months sober. But I just had this feeling like it was him, you know? And anyway, so Georgia's like, hey, pick me up from the airport. I'm like, okay, I can do that, right? And I believed it, you guys. I believed it. I was like, I'm going to pick him up and I'm going to take him home and I'm going to go on about my life and my business, you know? And I really did believe that. And so I pick him up, I take him to his house, and it was Tuesday. And I'm walking towards the door and I can remember it like it was yesterday. My hand is on the doorknob. And he's like, hey, do you want to see these rocks I brought back from Georgia? And thus everything gone.
Gone, just like that.
Gone.
Mhm.
You know, the recovery, the meetings, you know, everything that I've been doing is totally gone. I could not bring to the forefront of my mind any of it. Because like I told you guys, I hadn't been working on myself. I had zero protection, zero.
Mhm.
And so then it was around my birthday, October 26th. And I used with him for a few days. And then the guy that I was seeing in the rooms, he was like, well, on Halloween, you know, let's, I'm also dating another guy at the time. It's really messy. There's like 3 guys going on right now. Just, you know, insanity. Honestly, that's just what it was. And I was like living with this one guy and I needed to move out of my house, needed to move out with him in order to be able to see the guy I was dating in the rooms. But then I'm also doing drugs with Georgia. So it was just like
Mhm.
fucking wild. Just wild. And so I move out with this guy, break up with him, stop doing drugs because I know, or I leave, you know, him to be able, anyway. So he's like, on Halloween, the guy in the rooms, he's like, let's hang out, you know? And so I was like, okay. So I got myself all together for October 31st. And that is my sobriety date, October 31st, 2015.
Woo, woo, woo.
Woo. And finally, you know, like so the guy in the rooms, he's my husband now.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Oh, yeah.
And he was the one that had 18 months and you said,
Mhm.
there was something about him.
Yep.
I just knew.
Mhm.
Yep.
There was just something about him. And I had done a relationship, like conduct, ideal relationship with that sponsor. And I had put on there, like, my ideal relationship or guy would be somebody who's sober, somebody who has a relationship with God or a higher power, and all these, you know, honesty and, you know, a bunch of other traits. And God, I had done that like a year ago from the time that I met my now husband. Anyway, he showed me a completely different side of recovery. And he lived in Denver and I lived in Colorado Springs. So it was really good for me because it gave me the time to like go through the steps, to not turn my life over to another guy. Like I knew that if I didn't do something different, like this whole thing wasn't going to work. I knew it. And so, you know, thank God that I had been in and out of the rooms because I'd met so many great people and they were always willing to help me. Anytime I reached out to anybody, they were willing to help. And sometimes that help wasn't what I wanted to hear.
Mhm.
Like many times I would reach out and people would be like, you need to find a power greater than yourself. Like, what? You know, like, okay, that doesn't help me. But I now know what they are saying, because they couldn't help me. Like, people can only go so far. Sometimes, you have to allow some sort of higher power to come in and work in your life. And I didn't know how to access that power, even though I had been told for years and years how to access that power. And so I reached out to a sponsor in Denver. I would drive up every week, and I would, and I started to go through the steps. This time I didn't ever end up going to treatment. I just kind of went through the uncomfortability of the withdrawals and the and detoxing, mainly because I went to so many meetings. I lived in the rooms. I would go to at least 4 or 5 meetings a day. I would go to any and every event that was going on, because I was terrified. I really was. And this guy, my husband now, I saw the program in action through him. Like, he would honestly wake up in the morning and meditate and pray. And we would read recovery literature together at night. And it was something I had never witnessed before. And I remember we were going to some event and he was like, let's pray. I was like, what? Like, you want me to pray with you? He's like, yeah, you say it. I was like, oh, hell no. I am not. He's like, okay, I'll say it. And so we held hands. And that was the first time I had ever prayed with somebody else that intimately, with a guy for sure, like that. And it was powerful. Because I think he was nervous. We were going into this event, and things just are just uncomfortable in recovery, early recovery. Anything and everything is just uncomfortable.
It's true.
And so a lot of praying. So he showed me let's pray before this. And man, I took that with me because we went to a lot of events, and there would be these huge events. And so many people standing outside, and I would remember just pulling up and being like, I'm not going in there. I am not going in there. Look at all those people, just terrified, right? I don't want people to know me. I don't want people to see me or to know the things that I had done, because, right, then they might not love me. Mm-hmm. Again, going back to those beliefs. And then I would pray, and then I would go into those events, and it would be exactly what I needed. And so, yeah, early recovery for me was super uncomfortable. And this woman, and she was great. She took me through the steps. And, like I had said earlier, I did a lot of 1, 2, 3, and 4 steps. And I could never get to that 5th step. Never. Or I would get to that 5th step and lie. So yeah, there was a time I did do 1/5 step, but, and I would just completely lie. And I was on all these medications. Anyway, it was just, so this time, man, I was terrified. Being honest, is just my entire life. I mean, I lied. I remember Georgia. He used to tell me, your lying is just as bad as your drinking and using. And God, it was so hard for me to speak my truth. It was so hard for me to honestly talk about things in my life because of fear. fear drove every piece and part of my life since I was little. And I didn't even know it. And so I get to this, to this fifth step, and like I don't tell her some things. And I like go home and reflect. It's like this whole process. And I'm like sitting there, I like saged my room, took a bath, like
Yeah.
I'm gonna reflect, even though I had totally not told her the entire truth. And I'm like sitting in silence and like meditating, and it was my time to be with my higher power. And in my head, I'm like justifying and rationalizing, those two evil sisters. And I'm like, okay, I'm not going to tell her. Right. And then it was like, just like there's all these things in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous that I was like using for my benefit and like turning the words around to like suit me. Anyway, it was pretty messed up. And
I think we've all, anybody who's been in, I mean, I've definitely done that.
It's just like, oh, this is what this could mean.
Yeah.
In this situation for me.
Right now. Yes.
Yeah. And so by the end of it, I just was like, I knew like that intuition, that gut feeling, which I had a sponsor who told me that that's God. I just knew if I'm not honest, like this thing's not going to work for me.
Yeah.
And I knew it. Like honesty, it's the spiritual principle behind the first step, right? And it's something that is so, so important in recovery. And so many places it talks about being honest. And anyway, so I went and told her the things that I had been holding in, that I didn't want to tell anybody else, that shame, that guilt, all those things. And God, she was so amazing. She was just like, thank you for being honest with me. I'm glad that you trust me enough to tell me these things. And that was when my relationship with women like really, really started to shift. She loved me despite my entire history. That was huge. Because, in the past, I would tell these lies or I would do these dishonest things, and I would go back and I would tell people about it, right? Because I'm trying to clear the air or clear my conscience or whatever. And they would get mad, right? They'd be furious. Of course they would. That makes complete sense. I can't tell my boyfriend that I cheated on him and expect him to love me, right? But what my past had shown me is every time I was honest, something bad happened. And that's, that was what I believed until this moment in my life. And it was a huge, huge shift. Like I needed that. I needed to feel loved, and I needed another woman to love me despite my past. That was, God, I just love her.
Do you still have the same sponsor?
I don't.
Okay.
She ended up going back out. She had 11 years at the time that her and I worked together, and she ended up going back out, for a few years. But now she's back in the rooms and has been. And
God, you guys still have a relationship.
That's awesome. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, she's huge. She's huge for me. And, I remember when she went back out, she was like, those 11 years meant nothing. Like her and I were kind of still talking. So I was still trying to like help her a little bit. And I was like, to me, they mean everything, because I got sober, like for the first time in my life, like you truly helped me. And so she ended up giving me her 11-year chip, just to like have, because she's like, what am I going to do with this? And I was like, I'll hold on to it. Like
Yeah.
your 11 years meant something. I'll just say that, so yeah, that was powerful. And, in this time of like working the steps and working with her, I am like super involved in the 12-step rooms, just service. I am one that, well, I mean, I like to do stimulants. I like to go fast. I'm one that needs to be busy like constantly. And so I got busy for sure. Going to meetings, working, H&I meetings. So, hospitals and institutions, we would take 12-step meetings into hospitals and institutions. And I picked up quite a few commitments. I went into I ended up moving to Denver after a year of sobriety and going through the steps. My husband and I ended up moving in together. And so I moved to Denver. And so I was here in Denver doing a lot of service, and started to go taking these meetings in and just like really working with other people in treatment, just sitting down and like carrying the message and hopefully offering like some sort of hope. I really loved doing that. Really loved being around the women, bringing in speakers, just trying to let women know that like we can recover and that there is hope out there. And one of the meetings that I did was at a treatment center, a long-term treatment center, the Haven. So I brought a 12-step meeting in there for a really long time, about 9 months. And at the time I was working in this restaurant and I was starting to get really sick. And when I mean sick, I was starting to engage in a lot of these behaviors that start my downward spiral. I was talking to a lot of men while in this great relationship, right? And I was starting to, I just knew it was all bad. And I remember praying. I couldn't stop myself. And I remember praying, please, like, where can I be helpful? How can I be helpful? I'm going to school to be a counselor. I don't know what kind of counselor I want to be. And out of nowhere, the assistant director at the Haven, the meeting I had been going to, she's like, hey, do you know anybody who wants a job or who's going to get into counseling? And I just like looked at that text message, you guys, and I was just like, thank you. Like, this is it. Like, this is exactly what I needed. And so, yeah, I started working overnights at the Haven, and I started working with all women,
Awesome.
which was like exactly where I needed to be. And I started working with women who were formerly incarcerated coming into treatment. And these women at this particular house either had a child under 1 or were pregnant or trying to get their child back through DHS or whatever the circumstances were. And I loved it. I loved every single minute of working with all of them. I love the babies. It's an interesting piece when you add in parenting and recovery, right? Like,
Yes.
God.
Yeah.
Like just trying to be in recovery is a whole thing. Trying to parent and work and do all the things is like,
I just remember the experiences of watching moms with their babies trying to go through a TC program and what that was like. I mean, I didn't do the mom's house. I just got to be supportive of the
Mhm.
mom's house, right? But
Yeah.
watching that and being a part of that and knowing what that was like for a lot of them, right?
Mhm.
It's a big thing.
Mhm.
Yep. Yeah.
And it's hard.
Mhm.
God, it's so hard when you are trying to figure out your emotions and your place. And then you have this little thing that is screaming at you, but is like so beautiful at the same time, trying to like provide this life for them. And like this program was so beautiful because it was so long.
Mhm.
And I honestly believe it was helpful in a lot of ways, but it was really helpful for the moms.
Mhm.
Because it takes some time to like daycare and work and right. And anyway, so loved that entire experience and loved the people that I worked with. Moved up, eventually got off of overnights after many years. And I had a great boss and mentor who is still a really good friend of mine today. She really pushed me along and she really was like, take these classes, do these things, become a counselor. And I was like, okay, I'm all in. And I thought I had it like all figured out, and so I worked towards that and became a counselor and a substance use counselor and really wanted to be helpful to these women and did that for quite some time. And I always took care of myself during that. A lot of people, when they start working in treatment, they make that their recovery. And it doesn't always work out. And so I knew right away as I started to work in recovery that really wasn't recovery. I was working in a house, with people who were, making their way toward recovery. And so it was really important for me to stay close to the rooms and do all the things that I was doing. And so I continued to do all the things that I was doing while I was working in treatment. And I'm so glad that I did because, working at that program, I think I was there for 7 years. It became it became a part of me. Like it became who I am, right? Like working as a counselor was who I was, and I was proud of that. And then, the program took a different turn, and I needed to step away for my mental health and my health. It was just too much. It was just like,
Understandable.
yeah, like, I think I can handle a lot, right? And I am like deeply involved and have this great connection with a power greater than myself. And still, like, it was not great for me. And it was sad. And I mourned a lot of the things that happened. And it was a huge chunk of me just kind of felt like it was gone. And I felt really like, what do I do now?
Mhm.
Like I couldn't I have a certified addiction specialist license, but I don't have any type of degree. And a lot of places want you to have a degree. And man, those feelings started coming up, not good enough. Like, do I have to start school again in order to get to where, I had worked up to, over the past 7 years? And I was just lost. I had always had somebody kind of tell me what to do and direct my life. And that person was gone. And so I was like, I need to take some time away from this. And man, am I glad I did. I needed that. I needed just a little break to kind of recenter and grow personally with a power greater than myself. And that's what I did. And I was just kind of led into different circumstances and job opportunities. And over the past 4 years, I think I've held like 4 different jobs, or not 4 years, the past year or so, I've had 4 different jobs. Just like really trying to figure out my place and where I belong. And, if I know anything about, being in recovery, it's that comes first. And so as these feelings and uncertainties and fears, right? Like it's never going to go away. I might get some relief from it for a little bit. But I mean, over the years, like these feelings and thoughts have at some point cropped back up. And I need to be able to lean into the program in a power greater than myself and like trust, have this blind faith about what's going on around me. And for a really long time, that was really uncomfortable for me. But now I can kind of sit in it and be okay. I can be comfortable in the uncomfortability of recovery. And I know that this is coming, and I know that there is another side to it also. Like everything was so dramatic for a very long time, right? The ups and the downs, the highs and the lows. And that's just like that's not where I live today. And I do this thing like my life depends on it, because I absolutely, truly know that it does.
Yes, it does.
Yeah, it does.
Like I will die if I am not doing the things that I am doing on a daily basis. And I had to have like an entire shift in thinking and behaving. I needed a total overhaul, right? Like I had said, like you take the drink and the drug away, like I still got to work on me, right? And I got to be able to see and understand my behaviors and my thought patterns. Because if I don't know the truth about me, I can't ever see it coming, right? Like I can't ever see that downward spiral coming if I don't know the ins and outs of my thoughts and behaviors. And, a lot of literature says, this centers in the mind. They say it's a brain disease, right? Like this is up here in my thinking. And so I constantly have to be aware of my thoughts, and I can't just decipher what my thoughts are all the time. So I got to reach out to people in recovery, and I got to talk about it, right? I got to be honest
but
about
you know these things now.
The thoughts.
Yeah. That's what's so awesome.
Yeah. And that's the work, right? That's the work. Like, I wish it was easy, and I wish that and I just wish
if it was easy, everybody would be in
Exactly.
recovery already.
And it's not. It's so hard to see yourself for who you really are.
Yeah.
Allyson, I thank you so much for sharing with us. You're coming up on 10 years, right?
9.
Oh yeah, because it's 2024.
Yeah.
I don't. For some reason, I was like 2025. What are you talking about? But yeah. So 9 years on the 31st of this month. So just the 31st of October, just a couple of days away from us speaking here today. Congratulations!
Thank you.
Yes, and I want to thank you so much for coming in and sharing with us. And we're gonna have to do this again because you have a lot to say, and I just no, but it's awesome. It's I love that, and we're going to be bringing this program back to our on the radio here in Denver, beyond just online. And when we bring it back to on the radio, I want you to come back in and do this again and share with us on the radio, because we have more people to reach here in Colorado, and if we can just affect one person with you sharing your story, and I hate to say the word love, but one of the things that I appreciate, I guess is the word, is that you show that, somebody can relapse, and it doesn't mean it's over. It doesn't mean that I can't do this. you know, and you're also aware of the possibility of relapse still in your life, and protecting yourself from those things that could trigger that in any way or put you on a path towards that ever possibly happening. And I don't see that happening with 9 years coming up here, but just it's awesome to meet you, and I thank you for coming in to share your story thus far, and congratulations.
Thank you.
Yes.
I'm down to one camera at the moment. If you're like, where are you guys? But I had a little. There's always a technical issue here. Why? Sharing our technical issues. This is Sharing Our Stories. We want to thank you for tuning in with us, and we are here each Wednesday. That is our goal, to always be here each Wednesday around 6 o'clock Mountain Time. If you want to check it out live, or you can always just come back here to our Facebook page or our YouTube page and find our guests here sharing. So please be a part of this program by sharing that it's here, letting somebody know that recovery happens. And you can find us once again at facebook.com/SOS Sharing Our Stories. Here you are. Also on YouTube, just search Sharing Our Stories, and on Instagram, but you'll only find us while we're live on Instagram there. And we're going to start putting some shorter videos together. And if anybody wants to say, hey, I want to be a volunteer to come and work with you guys, we're looking for volunteers to come join us. This is a program that there is no financial gain in it. The only gain we have is knowing that recovery happens, and we want to share in recovery. So that's what it's here and all about. Allyson, thank you for sitting there so patiently on camera while I did all the talking too right now, because everybody's just staring at you like, one camera. All right, this is Sharing Our Stories, and we will be back and see you here next week. Thank you so much for joining us.